So this was on the Culture War from like a year ago. This was the guy that came on and said that his son was transitioned against his will.
Because of what the legal system is doing. And it seems like the solution should be to change the culture in the legal system.
That's
correct.
So here's where we get into the sticky area of policy, right? I never speak about social problems in terms of solutions, right? These problems have been with us. Look, infanticide and giving babies away were existing. How do you find, you know how you find Roman brothels when archaeologists find Roman brothels?
The bones of the dead children
The
out
bones
back.
of dead boys.
Boys, that's right. That's
They
right.
find dead, because they kill all the male babies. They're of no economic use. They raise girl children up to be prostitutes in these brothels.
Oh.
So that's how they find them, okay? So like, this is an ancient problem. It's never going away from us, but we should think in terms of mitigating these problems and minimizing them. And that's a better way of thinking about them, I think. So I don't ever talk in terms of solutions. The solution is, I believe, ending no-fault divorce, right? Completely ending no-fault divorce. And I would be even willing to compromise, because we live in a world, a democracy, where we have to, I would compromise and say, you may have no-fault divorce if there are no children in the marriage. If there are children in the marriage, it converts to a no-fault divorce.
I like that.
And now we have created a way for people to...
You mean it converts off of no-fault divorce?
You would have to go to an at-fault model at that point.
Yeah, you go to an at-fault model when you have children.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, and I'm willing to compromise with people who want these sort of what I call emotional marriages. You know, I'm willing, okay, fine, let's do that. I think we have to do some other things with, you know, correcting the legal system around domestic violence and some other stuff. There are legal ways to do this. I'm just telling you that you're fighting because of Title IV-D reimbursements to the states, which are heavily invested in divorce and only exist when fathers are out of the home, just like the welfare system destroyed the black families in this country. When these systems are so big, I mean, you're talking about trillions of dollars. These are bigger than some of the largest defense
Jeff is
programs.
the first one that educated me on this reality.
Yeah.
He really knows this.
Yeah, they're larger than some of the largest defense programs. And we can't get rid of these defense programs. The Marine Corps and the Army have been trying to get rid of the heavy division concept since the 1980s when I was in the military, and they can't get rid of it. So my problem is it's going to take 5 generations to alter these laws. What do we do about men in the meantime?
Here's the issue with...
Now, we're going to go back to, this is what conservatives will always say. When you say, hey, these laws are pretty bad, 18 years, I don't know about you guys, but if I get on child support at 30, I don't get off it till 48. That's pretty terrible. The conservatives will always say, hey, take all the responsibility. You get no reward and no freedom. What is that? That's enslavement. They're pushing enslavement. And you know what they say if the men say, you know what? I'm good. I am not doing that. No, thank you. You know what they say? They say, you're not real men. And then they do an appeal to morality. If you were just real, good, moral men, if you were a real man, you would man up and marry these hoes. You would man up and marry these subpar women that are divorcing you after 7 years and putting you on child support because, genetic legacy. Which, by the way, you have no guarantee. If the birth rate's 1.5 now, what are the odds it's going to go up in 10 years? So you have a kid now in 20 years when they decide, kid or no kid, is the odds that they will have a child or not have a child if it drops to 0.5 like Korea? Okay, so there's no guarantee.
Well, but the problem there is...
My point is...
The testing would have to be... We have seen stories. There was one story, I think it was out of Wisconsin, where a woman got pregnant. When she gave birth, she listed some random guy she knew as the father. I think it was Wisconsin. And then the guy was like, what? I'm not the father. Got a genetic test.
Yes.
Proved that he wasn't. And the judge said, don't know, don't care. The baby needs a dad, so you are now on the hook for it.
Well, that is not... That's an
insane.
aberration.
Right.
That's an aberration.
Actually, I'm sorry. Y'all need to look up Carnell West, who started the movement against this. But I can tell you this, in Texas, until 2014, all children in the marriage were presumed to be the husband's.
And that's actually how it should be. That's actually...
Yeah, so again, this is the woman saying, and I like her, she's been on the show, but she's saying the same thing. Man up, man. You should be on the birth certificate no matter what. Take all the responsibility.
What about when the woman has an affair?
It's called a presumption of parenthood.
What about when she has an affair?
Well, so then you need to presume. The presumption is correct. You should presume that the children born...
So now she's saying, give us the benefit of the doubt. We deserve the benefit of the doubt.
To a marriage are the genetic offspring. If there's a problem, That's the exception. Deal with the exception. I don't think that he should be responsible for a child, but the presumption is correct.
The problem is that, well, we used to do that, like for almost all of Western law. Right. We presume this. Right. But the issue comes when, what are the conditions under which you can demonstrate that the child isn't yours and be relieved of your obligations, right? Most states did not have a way to do that until just the last 6 years. Carnell, for example, I've talked to him at length about this. I mean, he paid child support for 15 years for a child that wasn't his, and they just wouldn't stop, even though he had genetic tests.
Wow.
Texas never allowed genetic tests until, I think it was 2014.
That's too bad.
California says that fathers may never genetically test their children without the consent of the mother, so they're allowed to hide it.
Yeah. Wow. So, I agree that we have got to overhaul the system.
So again, this is how women have a tendency, like the trad feministy women, they have a tendency to say, oh, just change it all tomorrow, where the men come in and say, well, that's not realistic. Because again, when men get things done, they have to make a plan, they have to follow through. Women have to get men to do it. Not all women. Not all. They have to get men to do it.
So that there are advantages financially, socially, for men to commit to the women that they're making babies with. And yeah, it's good for men and women, but it's non-negotiable for the babies. From a children's rights perspective, we have got to start changing culture, law, and technology so kids have both.
This is where it comes down to. Look, I'm with you. I'll tell you how much I'm with you. Even after my ex-wife tried to transition my son, for 5 years, I still told her I'd remarry her and raise our kids. Even though I have a total disagreement with her about that. But it's that important. I believe it, right?
Yeah.
My point is that, are we going...
And see, she keeps trying to interrupt him, right? This guy is smart. You can tell he knows the law in and out. But it's like she still wants to go on an emotional tirade. Oh, it should be. And he's like, well, this is what it is, honey.
Going to compare what men should do against an ideal that doesn't exist and won't exist for decades? Or what do we tell men in the meantime?
Culture, law, and technology don't reflect the ideal. That is true. Mm-hmm. The answer is not to remake children in your own technological image. That is not the solution. It is. You can go to Argentina. You can marry a woman. Just make sure that you raise your kids with the woman that is their mother.
Yeah, so again, she's saying, well, okay, so let me get this straight. Now, I'm just going to put myself in a man that really knows what's going on's shoes. Now, some men will say, you know what? I want a kid. I want a family. That's what I've always wanted. I will take the risk. I know this is risky, but I'm just going to pick the best woman I can. I'm going to take it anyways. I know this could happen. Fine. But what about a guy that says, you know what? I'm looking at this. I will not do that. I will not be enslaved for 18 years. I will not do it. I refuse. Okay. So what are his choices? One of them is a surrogate. Another is getting a woman pregnant in a different country. But what if he doesn't want to live there, but he wants a child? And he says, you know what? I'm going to send money. Now, is that ideal? Would I prefer that as a kid? No. But when you look at men's perspective, what are they supposed to do? And again, instead of saying, understanding where the men are coming from, finger wagging. You're not moral.
There's actually a Christian way to actually do surrogacy in a way.
No, there's not.
So you have legal surrogacy, but you don't actually use somebody else's egg. So for example, I've checked in 3 states, and there's nothing that prevents a married woman from entering a surrogacy contract. So you could get married, you have your wife sign a surrogacy contract, and then you have conjugal relations in a biblical way, and then the children belong to the father, and the mother has the legal relation of a stepmother.
Interesting, but she's still the biological mother in every way.
That's horrifying.
And that's what that is. Wait a minute. Why do you find it horrifying? Because every woman I've talked to says this.
Because the biological mother, the birth mother, the social mother should all also be the legal mother. You do not splice woman into 3 different parts, the social, the legal, and the genetic. From a children's rights perspective, all of those women need to be found in one place. And just like it was an injustice to strip you of your rights to your children, even though you're the biological father, it's an injustice to strip children of their mothers.
Would you marry under such a condition? Would you marry under those conditions if a man said, hey, I want you to sign a surrogacy contract so the children are mine in a patriarchal and biblical sense, they belong to me? Would you marry and have a child under those conditions?
I married and had a child with a man who 100% gets 100% claim to my children. and I don't need
Not
surrogacy
legally.
to do it.
You have the claim to the children.
No, we both have a claim to the children. If I were to divorce him, there's a possibility the courts would
Yes.
side with me.
They probably
but no,
would.
right
No,
now,
hold on, Tim. I'm going somewhere with this. Do you think most women would do that, or do you think? I think precisely 0 women would sign something.
I
like
agree.
that. What this tells me is that when we put women in the same conditions that fathers are in today, they choose not to have children and not to marry, which proves my point that under the current conditions, surrogacy is a legitimate option.
I was going to
That is the most mic drop thing I've ever heard. So one, she's not answering the question. This is what I mean when I say feminist or Christian, like feminist women have a tendency to still be disagreeable. He's asking her a direct question. Would you do it? And then she's trying to divert it. She's saying, well, but my husband does have the right to his kids. No. Legally, you do. And as soon as she's in the man's shoes, she says, no, that's wrong. We would never sign up for that. But yet, they will still say that men are not real men if they don't want to do it.
say that your statement about legal surrogacy to the biological mother is very logically sound and very emotionally horrifying.
Yes, it is. and so imagine how fathers feel when they are when no offense, but trad women are constantly telling young men to just suck it up, take the risk, and marry. When we all admit that this is precisely 0 women would do that under the same conditions, because this stepmother in this scenario, being a constant caregiver to the child, would have the same visitation rights as fathers have today. They would have continuous visitation, continuous relationship. The courts would respect that.
I understand that
Women won't do it. Why should men?
I understand that it's risky and the deck is stacked against them. I'm not seeing any man who is living a happier, better life than the men who are married stably to the women and the mothers of their children.
Yeah, but
I agree.
And that is...
Yeah, if the woman decides to not be a terrorist. I mean... Yeah, if the woman says, you know what, I am not going to make his life a living hell. But you know what? The homeless men that are on drugs because their child support is 80% of their paycheck, and no matter how much money they make, it keeps getting raised and they're dragged in and out of court for 15 years versus the guy who just never married. I don't know. I could see the argument that the guy who never married is happier.
Something to strive for and is ideal, but I think Jeff is correct. The risks are there for men.
Right.
And we end up seeing this reflected in a lot of online communities.
Yes.
Yes,
a lot
right.
A lot of men are outright saying, I mean, with MGTOW,
Yes.
MGTOW's not absolutely about any one thing. There's a bunch of different issues, but
Yeah.
a lot of these men are saying the risks are too great. And Jeff makes a great point. Just like a woman would say, I'm not going to enter into that agreement. Men literally are saying that.
I know. I've read them. I've talked to them.
But what's disturbing is, you find it horrifying. I find it horrifying. I mean, it's a thought experiment. It's a lot of the stuff I'm talking about, people think I'm proposing. They're thought experiments.
Right.
It's a thought
That's a good
experiment.
Well, and it's effective to point out the problems.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Thank you, Donna.
I'm here for you.
No, it's very hard. Women are rightly upset about me even proposing that. But that is the exact position every father is in legally, not necessarily socially, but legally before when they have children with a woman in a normal marriage under this horrifying legal regime. And if women won't, again, I ask, if women won't do it, well, how can we ethically tell young men to do it? I don't think we can.
I want to just say one thing, because I think some people don't understand. MGTOW means men going their own way.
Yes.
Online communities where men talk about, they'll post memes of like a guy sitting on a cliffside with his dog, and it'll say something like serenity or whatever.
Yeah.
But I will also add, you moving to California, sir, is the political equivalent of running into a burning building.
You are correct.
So we have to talk about getting away from cities and getting away from these jurisdictions if you can.
They never think it's going to be them. They have I can't remember these numbers off the top of my head, but I remember I had someone go through if you get divorced, what % of divorces are malicious, meaning that she's taking away she's actively trying to get you to not see your kids. It's like 20%. And then that's just the kids, right? If you include the financial piece too, it's in one of my Google Docs, I'm going to pull it up, but it's roughly 30 or 40%. So half of all divorces, at least, because benefit of the doubt, like giving as much benefit of the doubt as possible, half of divorces. The real divorce rate's like 60% roughly. So that's like 1 in 3 men. That's how common this is. They never think it's going to be them.
Because of their kids.
Yeah.
Some people may want to stay cities and getting away from these jurisdictions if you can, and that we understand some people may want to stay in these places because of their kids.
Yeah.
But I will also add, you moving to California, sir, is the political equivalent of running into a burning building.
You are correct.
So we have to talk about getting away from cities and getting away from these jurisdictions if you can, and that we understand some people may want to stay in these places because of their kids.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have said, I can't move out of the city. You know, I got divorced. My kids are still, what am I supposed to do? And I'm like, that I view as your house is on fire and you refuse to leave until you know your children are safe.
100% agree.
I also want to point out that what Jeff is doing is the essence of true manhood and the best kind of father, the best that fathers can be, which is utter protectiveness and everything you can in terms of provision.
It would have saved him more time to just give up because he had the same outcome to court for 12 years to not get custody. Can you blame men for looking at that and saying, yeah, I'm not going to fight in court. Good luck, kids. Sorry. But again, it's the best fathers are enslaved to women. That's what they're communicating.
Despite everything being against you. And there really is something distinct. I would say that it is a genetic, biological drive that good men have. And every child should have a father like this.
This is the pain men feel. So, you know, feminists have often said men don't participate in child rearing equally, all this. So that's not true.
That's not true.
Really, until the 1950s, nobody was rich enough to do that, right? Throughout all of human history, women raised young children. In most civilizations, the age of 9. The reputation that the Italians had for being mama's boys because it was till 12, you know, that's where that comes from. They stayed with their mother, and then the boys went with the fathers, and so girls and young children stayed with the mothers. Men have always equally participated in child rearing. And what men feel particularly is this horrifying thing where your offspring are going to be raised in values contrary to your ancestors and to your own values. And your children will be turned against your own values. I have a friend in Houston whose wife divorced him and converted his children to Islam, and he's a devout Christian. His children have been turned against his values. You know, this is what men fear tremendously. It's not just physical provision.
This is what divorce enables. You know, there was a study done by a researcher named Elizabeth Margaret, who her study was called Between Two Worlds, and it studied the impact that divorce had on children. And in close to 50% of cases, the child developed 2 different personalities because they had mom had one political persuasion, you know, mom's a Republican, dad's a Democrat, mom's a Buddhist, dad's a Republican, or, you know, a Christian. You know, the screen limits over here are like 1 hour a day. There's unlimited screens over here. Dessert like this, diet like this,
my son was
cauliflower crust over here. Yes. And like kids have to transform to be a different person between dad's house and mom's house. And actually your situation was almost archetypal, where your child had to literally become a different person at mom's house.
Now, again, this kind of goes back to what I was told. She's talking about things that don't matter. Now, what I'm not saying is that maybe that's not important, but what matters more? The multi-personality thing or the men killing themselves every year because of family court? What is a bigger issue? So she brings it back to something that doesn't matter. He keeps bringing it back to thing that matters.
An environment where parents are just screaming at each other 24/7.
Yeah.
And so the
but you punish the parents for that, not the kids.
That's what I'm saying.
You're hired, dude. You're totally hired.
Here's an interesting thing about the rights of children, right? We often hear from the modern day left establishment narratives that children have a right to just insert and you name it.
Yeah, to having their transgender identity hidden from their parents. They have a right to testosterone from Planned Parenthood.
But my view is it's more so a right to your parents acting responsibly to protect you.
Okay, that's where I agree.
Meaning the child can't decide he wants to eat ice cream. That it is a violation of the rights of the child for a parent to just give them 3 gallons of ice cream for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yes, it is.
So here's the thing. Like, I have a children's rights nonprofit. And that is the right word for it. The reality is that children's right to their own mother and father, it actually might be too weak of a term. They have such a claim to their own parents that there really is very little language we could use to describe the strength of that claim. Okay, so I understand that rights is
the most fundamental human thing.
It is like literally one of the most universal.
And all human civilization is based on that one thing.
That's right. And so children have a right to be known and loved by their mother and father. They have a right to life. They have a right to an intact body, an unmedicalized body. They have a right to innocence. It is the duty of parents to protect those rights.
I love that you're talking about duties.
Well, they go together. In natural law theory, rights and duties are two sides of the same
That's
coin.
correct.
Okay. So you're exactly right, Tim, that there's a lot of momentum on the right when it comes to parental rights, and that's good. But parental rights has limits. You do not have a right to chemically sterilize your child just because you think I'm the parent, I can do what I want. So I think parental rights are important, but insufficient when it comes to child protection. That is why I use the language of children's rights. Because just because an adult wants to do something like take their kid to drag queens.
But the problem with children's rights, that sounds nice, right? Again, it goes back to sounding nice. How does the court view children's rights? The best interest of the child is what? The best interest of the mother. That is the original law that was implemented, and it was the Tender Years Doctrine. And the Tender Years Doctrine was a sexist law. And it assumed that the best interest of the child is to be with the mother under the age of 7. As you guys know, women are the most likely ones to abuse children, and they're the most likely ones to kill children. So again, sounds nice, not actually nice.
But here's the danger. Everything has pluses and minuses, right? The world's not, a black and white. The danger of children's rights is what we see in the family courts today, where unfortunately we live in a decadent society.
That's
and
true.
I mean that in the Latin sense,
Right.
decadenced, out of step with one another. There's no general agreement on what constitutes what's good for a child in many circumstances. So the notion of children's rights could be used in such a way as to force parents in California to transition their children. It is actually being used that way.
This is the challenge with conservatives. They want men to do all of the work, to take all of the responsibility for nothing in return, and they will shame them and say, you're not real men, you're not good men if you don't do it. And to me, that doesn't make any sense. Why on earth would a guy get married and have kids in a system where the woman is paid to rob him? Anyways, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Like the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel. Ring the notification bell. I love you guys. And please go to theaudacitynetwork.com if you can and you liked this stream. Get the yearly or monthly membership. You will get access to our documentaries when they come out. Subscribe, and I'll see you next time.